So we generally think of capital as assets that you have, money, equipment, and things like that, people, but there's much more to it than that. So today I brought on Dan Anderson, who is the president of Kingdom Way Ministries and also the National Ministry Director for FCCI. And we're going to talk about the 5 different capitals that we have as leaders and how it affects us today. So Dan, welcome to Redeeming Business Today podcast. And to start off with, what is one way that you have found to honor God in your business that others may not know about?
Man, that's a great question. And thanks for having me on the podcast, David. I really appreciate it. I know we've tried to get this going for a long time, so here it is. I would say this is top of mind is I really endeavor to seek to obey God in everything. That's the one thing. If I can do that, then I know that I'll obey him in every aspect of my life and leadership. And so that's one of my first values. So I have 3 values. And the first one is unquestioned obedience, even if sometimes it doesn't make sense. So that's how I endeavor to try to glorify God every single day.
Okay, that's great. Great.
Yeah.
And once you hear from them, run with it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Well, hey, give us a brief background on how God has led you to bring you where you are today and the different organizations that you're working with.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, this is a long story, but I'll try to encapsulate it and summarize it some here. So for the first 20 years of my vocational life, I was a pastor, and I didn't think I would do anything different. The first 10 years, I was a church planter and helped start a couple churches in Lawrence, Kansas and Kansas City, really growing areas. And it was super fun. I was bivocational most of those 10 years. And so I got some great experience in the marketplace. And then I was a lead pastor for 10 years in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. And during that time, God just really started breaking my heart in terms of, and how I describe it now looking back as I share the story with people, is that I didn't realize it, but I was on some level committing pastoral malpractice.
Really?
And what I mean by that is I started realizing that I think we did a lot of great things as a church, and me as a pastor had a lot of impact in the community, which is really exciting. But I started discovering that I was missing a crucial piece in my ministry, and that is empowering people in where they spend 60 or more % of their waking hours, and that is in the workplace. And so I started wrestling with, what does it look like to really help build devoted followers of Christ in the marketplace and help them bridge that Sunday to Monday gap that can so easily exist in our lives. And so I started a small group, and it just mushroomed from there. And long story short, after 5 years of doing work with some entrepreneurs and business people in my community as a pastor, I just realized that through what they taught me, that there was a need for this full time. And so that's how I ended up in Colorado and with Kingdom Way Ministries and now FCCI, doing it full time, just helping entrepreneurs understand what it looks like to live out their faith and their calling in the workplace.
And I think that's good, because from the pulpit, there's not a whole lot of talk about business, or they don't understand business. I mean, they think it's great. They think you're great as a business owner, but that's not their wheelhouse and what they do. So it's
absolutely,
nice to
and it's not intentional. Pastors, by and large, not all of them, but it's not intentional at all. It wasn't for me either until I started understanding their world a little bit more and started pressing into that.
Yeah. So you talked earlier about the 5 capital framework. What is the 5 capital framework on a high level there?
Yeah, so as a ministry, we do several things. So we host events that incite and inspire entrepreneurs. We do a few of those a year, and like we're doing one next week. We got a couple hundred people coming in Loveland, Colorado next week, which we're really excited about. But beyond that, we try to get them in peer advisory group forums with other Christian business owners and entrepreneurs to really grow their faith, kind of their inner world, that we grow their relational world and work on their business all in the one environment. But beyond that, we do a lot of coaching. And so In these environments with the peer advisory groups and with coaching, the 5 capitals framework comes up over and over and over again. And what I'm finding, a lot of people ask, like, Dan, what do you end up coaching around the most with executive leaders? A lot of times it might start with productivity or how to build culture and teams and some of the foundational things that skills that business leaders may still be working on. But by and large, David, what I found is people really end up going back to these 5 capitals. And the 5 capitals is simply this, and this is God's ideal framework for his priorities for us as leaders. And we coach around the personal side and the business side. I'll give the personal side first. It's spiritual. So love God with all your heart, soul, and mind and strength, and then seek first his kingdom and his righteousness and all these things. So if we get that right, a lot of the other ones start falling into place immediately. And then the relational is, love others as we're called to love others as we want to be loved and serve. And then the third one is physical. In our physical life, exercise, rhythms, sleeping patterns, and all that kind of thing, but also Sabbath rests. Then intellectual comes forth, and then the finances kind of follow that flow of ideal order. And the reason I'm sharing this, because you're sharing this with a lot of business people, but here's what I found is, like, if you don't get to as close to 100% health in those first 3 or 4 capitals first, the finances don't happen. Or if you don't get the first order right, the first 3, the intellectual or the business piece doesn't work. So many times, and here's what I think is, I think if we don't get to close to 100% health in each of those first ones, we reach a ceiling in our leadership that will never pass in our business or the organizations we're called to run. Or at the very least, they'll be ineffective because we're operating on less than a full tank in those first categories. Sure. So we have an assessment that we use, and just where's your real time in this, and just have a lot of conversations around that and help executive leaders build habits that will get them to 100% health in each of those areas, so they lead out of the overflow of what God's placing in those.
Okay, very good. No, I agree. Those are very good five aspects there. You kind of already said it, but would spiritual then, you feel like that would be the number one aspect to focus on, or like all 3 of those first 3, you kind of work on all of them together?
Yeah, so it kind of depends when we do the assessment. So we also have a business side. I'll just mention that real quick first, and we'll come back to that. So the business side is 5 Ps. It's purpose, and then you can kind of see the correlations in the other personal side of your life too. But it's purpose, people, pace, perception or innovation, and then profit. So we have one that does the personal side, then one that kind of brings both of them together. So to answer your question, a lot of times when we do that assessment, there might be a lot of things that uncover of the gap of the spiritual is not number one. So tell me about that. What's going on there? And what do you feel like that's missing in there? What are some ways to beef that up? But some, might have that have some good spiritual practices in place, good healthy rhythms for Sabbath work rest. But then maybe the relational and physical worlds are really out of shape, and it's affecting the way they show up in their workplace. So we ask, questions about, well, why is that happening there? And, what patterns do you see from this? And just surface a lot of different things from the coaching conversation, and then work on action steps to help them develop habits that really shore up those areas that they're weaker in.
Okay. No, that makes sense. If you have an assessment, that's a great place to zero in on your need.
Yeah, for sure. And then we kind of customize the approach to whatever the person's need is, and the 5 capitals assessment is something we use a lot of times, the first right up front, but we have other tools and frameworks too that we help them to really discern what is it that God is calling them to really work on in that season, or maybe there's some blind spots that they really want to focus on, and then we just kind of go from there.
How do you focus on your blind spots if they're blind spots and you don't know about them?
Well, that's the issue of a blind spot, right? So that's why everyone needs a coach or a group that kind of helps
or a
uncover
friend or
those
something.
things that
Yeah.
we don't know what it's like sometimes of what it's like for others to experience our leadership on the other side of us.
Yep. No, it's true. That's where other people come in. No matter who you have, you need somebody around you who understands you and can
Absolutely.
see that. So, um, so spiritual. What things would you suggest to help people shore up their spiritual life and their relationship with God and seeking God's kingdom?
Yeah, so this is where I think the integrated life, the Latin word integer, really means whole, and we get mathematic terms that related to that. But I think it's also a part of this aspect of our spiritual life is it's all interrelated. So obviously, you might think of things like spiritual practices and disciplines that people aren't engaging in. So some of the men's immersives experience groups that we have for entrepreneur men, we find that helping them, they don't understand the spiritual practice really well, or they don't have exercised them. But this is my philosophy, David. You might disagree with me on this, but I believe that a spiritual practice is anything that helps us to love, honor, and serve God better. So a spiritual practice could be related to practices of productivity that free them up to bring them greater freedom, purpose, and joy. So, for example, I'm a certified coach with Full Focus Planner and Michael Hyatt's organization as well. And so I think sometimes a spiritual practice can be disciplines in making sure that we go to our calendar and there's that daily priority time with God, as an example. But it could be even practices of uh, so many entrepreneurs I know, they're not doing fun things and they get burnt out. Like the one guy I was coaching, part of the way back from being really burnt out, it's like, hey, I asked, I'm a challenge them, just do one thing this month that's fun. If it's golf, if it's sailing, hiking, whatever. He wasn't doing any of that, and we reported back. We reported back, and then uh, I said, okay, now I want you to map out the rest of the year, at least one fun thing every month. This last year, he already had it mapped out before I could even ask him about it because it was so life giving and improved his spiritual capital
Hmm.
because it was refilling. All these other things were draining him, and we see this in Jesus too. Just spending time with a few close friends, like the inner circle of the 12, even James and John as an example, and Peter, but then also Lazarus and Mary and Martha seemed like a family he really enjoyed being with, and I think that was part of his spiritual disciplines. We don't see that in Scripture, but those are things that replenished and refueled him. And we talk a lot about what do you do for a Sabbath? That's a challenging one because many entrepreneurs don't take
Don't.
any kind of Sabbath. And, there's a reason why it's one of the 10 biggies.
Yep.
The 10
Yep.
Commandments is
We don't think of it
because
that way, but
we
yeah.
don't. We don't. But that's a spiritual practice that is part of the spiritual capital, but it's also part of the physical capital as well that bleeds over. And I tell you what, if I can help an entrepreneur understand what it looks like to truly take a Sabbath that is not just recreational but regenerates, recreates, that's a game changer there.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm reading a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And it talked
Yes.
about the Sabbath. The definition of it comes from the word Shabbat, I believe, which literally means to stop. It's not
Yeah.
just rest, but it's to stop. Just
To
stop
cease.
everything. Yes, to cease, stop, and rest. And
Yeah.
yeah, he made a big case about today. We just keep going and filling our lives with everything and don't like even silence. We like
Yeah.
having things in our ears all the time, and
Yeah.
that's a missed art. But it's a habit too.
And this is the other thing that I end up getting into privileged and just sacred space conversations with business leaders. And it's like, we talk about the iceberg and the freedom model. I think every entrepreneur is looking for greater freedom, joy, and purpose, and it's evading them, and they have this smoldering discontent, and they really don't know why. Sometimes it's because they're not truly integrating their faith calling in their business, and we share a lot of ideas how they can do that. But sometimes it's just because they haven't looked underneath the surface. So, for example, in the relations, why is it so hard for them to take a Sabbath? Why is it hard for them a lot of times, and for me, speaking myself, to just stop and unwind and do nothing? Well, there's lies and limited beliefs that underneath the surface that we really drill into is like, what's perpetuating that, the above the water line that we see and feel. And a lot of times it's like, well, if I stop, then everything else is going to stop. The business, the production, and there's lies and limiting beliefs and fears that are driving that behavior. Like it's up to, if it's to be, it's up to me, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
and so to cease, to stop, and the Sabbath rest is really a call to, am I going to trust God to build the business? There's a scripture in Psalm 127, unless the Lord builds the business, the laborer labors in vain. And so it's almost an opportunity to say, okay, God, I'm going to stop. I'm going to trust you that you got all this. This is just my privilege to steward, but I'm going to trust you and rest. And it's amazing how when we obey God, all of a sudden things start happening when we're stuck. That's just unbelievable. And that's true of any spiritual practice, and putting God first is, I don't have time for this, but you don't have time not to make time for that.
Yeah, we don't think about that. But yeah, like you said, unless the Lord builds a house, the laborers build in vain.
Yes.
I like to think of what Paul said in 1 Corinthians is, I planted, Apollos watered, God caused the growth. And when you look at
Yes.
business, it's our job to do the functions, get our product, do things, but there's time to stop too. And God is the one
Mm-hmm.
who causes the growth.
Yeah.
Um, when I'd like to hear your take on it, but it's interesting. From Malachi 3:8-12, it talks about people robbing God. He says, bring
Mm.
all the tithe into the storehouse and prove me now herewith, if I will not open to you the windows of heaven and
Mm.
pour you out a blessing where there will not be room enough to receive it. And I
Yeah,
wonder
that's
how many
good.
people out there are getting God's blessing. They have way too much work than they know what to do with, but yet they try to grab it all
Mm-hmm.
instead of just saying, okay, I don't have time to do all this stuff. I'll just do the 40 hours or so of work. And if the other stuff slides away, it slides away, and be super
Mm-hmm.
content with that time. I don't know of people who do that. Usually if they get all this sales, they're like, ooh, I'm stressed now because I got to meet all the need. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%, man. It's good.
So, um, but yeah, so spiritual, relational, physical. How have you found physical? Is that talking about health of the body then, or what is that talking about?
Yeah, normally you think of physical, like you talk about, talk about your sleep, what's your sleep number, like the bed, but ideal
Yep.
hours of sleep that you need to feel rested. That's a part of it. And then diet we think of, and we think of exercise, and certainly all that's true. I work out 4 5 times a week, and if I don't do that, I notice the difference of my mental clarity and sharpness. If I don't watch what I eat, it slows me down, and I'm not functioning at maximum capacity. So it's those things, but the physical is also what we just talked about, is your work rest rhythms. And here's something else that I think is really important, a distinction is normally in our culture, here in America for sure, and very many other parts of the world, we have a mentality. This goes beyond the below the surface lies limiting beliefs we've developed too. It's like we have a mentality that we normally think of in work in this way: I work first and then I rest.
Mm.
And that is the mentality many entrepreneurs are functioning by. The problem is our work is never done, so we don't rest enough. And then what happens is, the law of thermodynamics is for every second law of thermodynamics, every action there's equal opposite reaction. If we
Yep.
work, and we get the pendulum up here, and then we crash into rest. and then we don't engage with our families well, and we don't enjoy our time. It's just crash. And then what happens? Dallas Willard, you're I know you got a lot of spiritual background and kind of ministry background. You may have heard this before, but Dallas Willard, I love this quote, is if we do not carve out a satisfying life under the rule of God, sin will start to look good.
Interesting.
So when we crash into rest, all of a sudden we're still craving something more, and so we start turning to binging on Netflix or alcohol or other things to fill that satisfaction void in our hearts. But this is the biblical philosophy: is rest comes first. Even the created order before sin entered the world, God said there was evening and there was morning. That was the Hebrew time scale. Evening and morning was the day, right? And so you can learn a lot from that, is that as the rest came first and then the work came after that. So a lot of these 5 capitals is like, how do we get those things right? So out of the overflow, then we give our 100% to work and to leading our teams and working with our customers and vendors well.
Yep, very good. And I've heard also the illustration of like 2 horses. If you're going to bet on a horse and they're the same size, same muscular build and all that, and one is sick and one is healthy, who's going to win? It's the healthy horse. It's the healthy horse. The healthy person versus the sick is gonna win every time.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
So yeah, that health is very key in not just business but in all areas of your life. So Dan, do you have any final thoughts of encouragement or for our audience today as we close out?
Yeah, one thing that's on top of mind. We had a group discussion just this morning on this, and this is something I'll leave everybody with. And if anyone's interested in connecting with us for events, coaching, you don't have to be local with us here in Northern Colorado, Denver, but you could check out our website for all the things that we're up to. And if there's a way we could serve you, we'd love to. It's kingdomwayministries.net. And we have groups called Banded for Men nationwide that are for entrepreneurs, where we meet half day for every single month to work on every dimension of your life. Some of these things we talked about all in one setting. So I'll share this as in Exodus chapter 32 and 33. Moses went through a lot of changes in a really quick order after he came down. I mean, think about leading an organization or business of 2 million people. That was his job and task. He comes down from the mountain and they're all in disarray. They're worshiping an idol after just seeing God move in amazing ways. So he quickly went from correction and anger to intercession for the people selflessly, and then also an intimate reaction with God where God and him are talking face to face. And this is the thing that really strikes me about that. God says, well, let me go with you, Moses, to the promised land. And he didn't settle for that. He said, no, it's like, I want you to go with us. And he interceded for that. And it says there that if your presence does not go with us, don't even send us. And I tell you what, I really believe that the greatest gift an entrepreneur can give the people that they lead is the gift of righteousness and a gift of presence. Someone who's been in the presence of God and has the power of God in their life. Like in Acts 4:13, where it says that even these unlearned disciples of Jesus, everyone noticed that they had spent time with Jesus, right? And that is the best gift we can give to anyone we lead, is that gift of presence, marked by the presence of God. So that'd be my encouragement.
Okay, that's super good, Dan. Thank you very much. And thank you for your encouragement today and talking about the 5 capitals. And friends, if you're looking to go deeper with Dan and his work, check out the show notes for some links, the links and sites and his contact information. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating, review, subscribe to our newsletter. You can get a verse of the week to not just inspire you, but also questions to inspire you as well that way. And remember, your business represents the great God you serve. So build a business worthy of God's name in a way that honors him.